Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Darshawn McAway. You're listening to the WOW Podcast. I have on the phone a special guest, Jude Roy. He's the author of The Miracle and The Swamp Queen. Jude, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great. So before we get into your books, I like to ask authors, writers, and even illustrators, what made you want to start writing books in general?
I was born in a small community in Louisiana. It's called Châtaignier, and it's a Cajun culture. They speak French, but it's not a written language, so there are a lot of storytellers. And I remember sitting in the shadows at night and listening to my father and his friends tell these tales. And it wasn't until I got to school and started learning how to write that I thought maybe I could put some of them into words, into written language.
Exactly. I see. So what type of genre do you prefer to write?
Well, I dabble in just about everything. I suppose I published blogs, poetry, personal essays, novels, and stories. But I love mysteries. As a young boy, I guess I was about 14 or 15. I discovered pulp novels, and it's the pictures. I'm 14, so the pictures of these seductive women really drew me in there, and I started reading the books, and I fell in love with the tough guy detectives. Marlowe, Hammett, Spillane, McDonald's. I read probably all of Gardner's Perry Mason books. I love the snappy comebacks, the dogged determination, the rugged toughness of these guys. So I created years later, I created my own detective, and in The Swamp Queen, for example. My latest John LeGrand book, the Cajun PI, I draw on those characteristics quite a bit, in fact. But I've got, I guess, about 7 novels out. The latest 2 are The Swamp Queen, which is the John LeGrand one, and the other one is The Miracle, which is more of a literary type of story.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about The Swamp Queen.
John LeGrand gets a visit early in the morning from one of his old college buddies. They had been roommates together, and the guy actually stole his girlfriend and married her, and now she's missing, and she wants him to find her. My wife and I lived on the Atchafalaya Swamp in Louisiana for a couple of years, and I always knew I wanted to set a novel somewhere in that swamp, and so it takes LeGrand to Lafayette, Louisiana, which is pretty close to Henderson, Louisiana, where the Atchafalaya levee is around the area, and there he goes. He starts finding out, that there's some police corruption here. There's a murder of a man that's sort of connected to her, and it just builds up until he finally has to go into the swamp. He and his college buddies. It was fun revisiting the swamp in Lafayette, where I went to college for 4 or 5 years. So it was a lot of fun writing.
Okay, so what about The Miracle? What is that book about?
Ooh, that one's a little tougher. It's not as playful or anything. That one is more of a long, short story. I think it's somewhere around 10,000 words or something, and it's pretty short. But it's about a woman who was abused by her stepfather when she was a child. And when when she gets a little older, she turns to alcoholism, a couple of failed marriages, prostitution, and at one point she's homeless, and she meets this illiterate grocery store helper, and she convinces him to let her stay with him, and it's sort of a miracle the way everything turns out, because that was the last thing she expected, was some kind of relationship with this guy, and it turns out that there's a miracle here, but even miracles can turn your life upside down, and it does.
What type of mind frame do you have to be in to write something where someone is being experiencing domestic violence or some type of crime scene? Like, what kind of space do you have to put yourself into?
My current work in progress is a psychological mystery thriller, where I had to put myself in the mind of the killer, and that's very difficult. It was very difficult for me to do. I researched tons of material on these kinds of people, serial killers, and I sort of tried to feel the way he felt, as if everybody was against him, and it was it's not an easy thing to do. In fact, the book right now is in the hands of a psychologist friend of mine who's reading it and letting me know where I failed.
Right.
If I did. It's very difficult, and you have to think like a killer, and you have to be merciless. It's a lot easier to write about the good guys, like the John LeGrands, who's going out to solve these crimes, and it is to put yourself in the mindset of someone who kills for the pleasure of it, or because he feels he's been wronged and he's getting even, his revenge, kind of thing. Those are difficult characters to really get into, but somebody's got to write it, so.
Yeah, might as well be you. So tell us, where can your books be purchased, and your website information?
My books can be purchased on Amazon, easy enough. In fact, all of them are ebooks, so they're pretty easy to find. There's like 4 in the John LeGrand vein, and the other 3 deal with Cajuns, the loss of the culture, that kind of stuff. I'm definitely Cajun. My blog is called The Cajun PI and Other Matters Cajun, but basically I put short stories on there sometimes for free. Just in fact, my latest blog was a John LeGrand short story called The Adoption. And I have a Twitter page also, and I do things on there, but and Amazon has an author page that I have, in Goodreads also. You can find me all on those things just by typing my name in there, and it's a pretty easy name to remember.
Excellent. Well, we're talking to Jude Roy. He's the author of The Miracle and The Swamp Queen. These are 2 separate books that were released in November and October. You can go to WOWPODCAST.shop to hear the latest interview. That's WOWPODCAST.shop. I'm your host, Darshawn McAway. Jude, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you, too. Thank you.